Thank you for joining us this evening for DelCOG's 2025 annual meeting. I am John Kowalko, the current president of the DelCOG Board of Directors. I have been president of DelCOG for the past 3 years. I took over for Keith Steck. As someone who is deeply passionate about government accountability and transparency, it has been an honor to serve in this role at one of the most important organizations in Delaware. At the end of this meeting, we will announce the results of our officer elections for those who will serve as president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer for the next 2 years. Before we get to our two featured speakers, I would like to provide an update on what DelCOG has been up to this past year and what we have accomplished. We will also be issuing a written annual report that will be sent out to our mailing list and available on our website. If anyone would like to join our mailing list or become a member of DelCOG, please visit our website at www.delcog.org. Finally, just so everyone is aware, this meeting is currently being recorded. We will also make the recording of this meeting available to view in case anyone is not able to attend tonight or would like a copy of it. And we should have that up on our YouTube page in the next day or two. DelCOG was established in 2006 as a nonpartisan coalition of journalists, news organizations, public officials, private citizens, and other organizations who believe that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people should be open to the people. As stated in our mission statement, the Delaware Coalition for Open Government is committed to promoting and defending the people's right to transparency and accountability in government. We serve as a resource through education and advocacy, and we work to strengthen Delaware's Freedom of Information Act and its application. For the past 19 years, DelCOG has had an enormous impact on making Delaware government accountable to we, the people. We have defended and expanded the Delaware Freedom of Information Act, also known as FOIA, which gives members of the public the right to access government documents and meetings. We have assisted numerous individuals and organizations with FOIA issues and requests. We have taken on state courts to force them to keep their proceedings open to the public. We have raised awareness of wrongdoing and corruption to hold those in power accountable. In the past year, DelCOG's efforts have included successfully advocating for legislative changes to ensure accountability on local school boards after issues occurred in the Christina School District and exposed critical flaws. We have also successfully advocated against wasteful spending of taxpayer money on funding proposed renovations to the Delaware General Assembly that would have cost over $130 million for a building that is used less than 45 days out of the year. The proposal would have included an underground tunnel that would have allowed legislators to avoid members of the public when entering Legislative Hall, and thankfully this proposal has been stopped. We have also successfully advocated for increased public participation in the determination of whether to approve and construct a master data center near Delaware City. The proposed data center would use more electricity than every house in Delaware combined, and initially it was being rushed through with no public input. If you would like to join our data center committee to work on this issue, please let us know. The next committee meeting is November 10th, and if you would like to attend, you can find the details of it on our website's event calendar. In the past year, we also successfully advocated for the passage of House Bill 6, which expanded the state auditor's ability to issue subpoenas. We successfully advocated for the passage of House Bill 9, which requires public officials to disclose when they have multiple jobs with the state and grants the state auditor greater powers to enforce double-dipping laws. We have supported several other bills to increase transparency in state politics, including House Bill 155, which will require Public Integrity Commission reports to be available on the agency's website. We will continue to advocate for these bills in January, the ones that did not pass, when the legislature is back in session, as Delaware's legislation lasts for 2 years. And any bills that were not passed in 2025 can still be passed before the end of the session at the end of June 2026. In the past year, we have continued to monitor implementation of the Federal Corporate Transparency Act, which requires the Financial Crimes Enforcement Unit, also known as FinCEN, to collect information on owners of U.S. businesses in order to combat money laundering and other crimes. DelCOG had previously advocated for the passage of this important legislation, which went into effect of January last year. We have also continued to monitor the state government's response to the scandal involving lead in our school drinking water. The state has not been transparent about their oversight on this issue, and DelCOG joins with Lead Free Delaware in calling for public reporting on how school districts have spent the money they were given to fix these issues. In March, we were one of the proud sponsors of the League of Women Voters League Day in Dover, which addressed issues with healthcare, housing, and education in Delaware. Internally, we have revised our bylaws to include minor clarifications. Our updated bylaws were amended at our October 14th board meeting, and they're available on our website for anyone to view. We have continued to add more information to our website at delcog.org to help the public stay informed about open government issues in the state and take action on them. We also plan to transition soon to a new email platform providing updates to our membership. And if you would like to join our mailing list, please go to our website to sign up. Our biggest accomplishment in the past year, however, is the successful establishment of a Delaware office of the Inspector General. After many years of leading the fight for this office, Senate Bill 4 was passed by the General Assembly and signed by the governor, and the search for who will lead the office is now underway. A Delaware Inspector General was first proposed in 2007 with bipartisan support. Despite unanimous support and passage in the House, the bill never received a vote in the Senate. One of the sponsors of that bill, former State Representative John Kowalko, my dad, did not let that effort fade away. Delaware continued to be one of the most corrupt and least transparent governments in the country. And in 2020, spurred by scandals such as the mishandling of asbestos at a Boxwood Road construction site and backroom deals that led to the dismantling of the Rodney Square bus hub in Wilmington, Representative Kowalko worked with DelCOG to draft and introduce a new Inspector General bill, which would have created the strongest Inspector General's office in the country. Despite widespread support, then Speaker of the House Pete Schwarzkopf killed the bill by refusing it to be voted on. Undeterred, DelCOG continued advocating for this vital oversight office. After the retirement of Representative Kowalko, Senator Laura Sturgeon, who joins us tonight, took on the responsibility for this cause, and in 2024, she introduced Senate Bill 4, an even stronger version of the prior legislation. Thanks to her dedicated and unwavering efforts, and joined by House sponsor Cindy Romer, and with the support of the newly elected governor, Matt Meyer, the Delaware Office of the Inspector General became law in this past year. The new office will work with the elected Attorney General and State Auditor, as well as the Public Integrity Commission, to ensure that Delawareans can have trust in their government to work towards the best interests of all of us. In the past 5 years, DelCOG has held multiple events, panel discussions, meeting between stakeholders regarding a Delaware Inspector General. We worked with the National Association of Inspectors General and have written a chapter for a book on our efforts that will be published in a compilation edited by Professor Robin Kemp from the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. We have gathered signatures, wrote numerous op-eds and letters to local newspapers, and joined with other groups to finally get this over the finish line. Most important, however, was the voice of the public. It was thanks to all of you and all of those who called their legislators, attended meetings and events, and put the pressure on those in power to do the right thing. The result is the strongest and most important office of the Inspector General in the country. Mandated to investigate and prevent fraud, waste, mismanagement, corruption, and other abuse of governmental resources, this office signals a sea change in Delaware politics. The so-called Delaware way of corrupt backroom dealings is fading away, and in its place is the power of we the people to determine how our government is run. Thank you to all of you who made this success possible. As many of you know, my dad, Representative Kowalko, passed away last month. He had worked on creating a Delaware office of the Inspector General for almost 20 years, since the first year he was in office. Seeing the creation of this office was one of his proudest moments, and he was also one of DelCOG's advisory board members. Prior to joining as one of our advisory board members, DelCOG had honored Representative Kowalko in 2018 with our Government for the People Award in honor of his dedication and passion towards fighting for open and accountable government. If I may, I would like to hold a brief moment of silence in his honor. Thank you. If you would like to join DelCOG, please let us know. You can send us an email or submit your information through our website. The only requirement for membership is that you believe that our government should be open and accountable to we the people. Please also consider joining our mailing list and like and follow us on Facebook to stay up to date on open government issues. Financially, DelCOG has $14,262.47 in our bank accounts as of the end of September. Thank you for all those who have donated to DelCOG. As a small organization, we have been exploring ways to increase our annual budget so we can take on more actions, including a legal support fund to ensure enforcement of Delaware's open government laws. If you would like to support DelCOG financially, please visit our website to learn how you can donate. Finally, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to all those who have supported DelCOG. As an all-volunteer organization, our success depends on the efforts of all of us together. I would like to thank all of my fellow board members. Thank you to Vice President Al Jackson, Secretary Nick Wasilewski, and Treasurer Anita Rush, as well as board members Joe Edlin, John Flaherty, Corley Pride, Bill Shields, and Keith Steck. Thank you to all of our advisory board members, Bill Cortez, Dave Finger, and Catherine Ward. And thank you to all the DelCOG members who are not on the board but have taken the time to attend our meetings, serve in our committees, and make our organization so successful. It is only because of all of our work together that DelCOG is able to have such a major impact. Thank you to everyone who has dedicated your time, effort, and resources to this important cause. The establishment of an Office of the Inspector General was a crowning achievement of this organization, and I cannot wait to see what we can achieve together in 2026 during DelCOG's 20th anniversary. We are going through an unprecedented opportunity for change in Delaware, transforming the first state into one where openness, transparency, and accountability are fundamental to the operation of our state government. Now I would like to introduce and welcome Keith Steck, former president of the board, and he will introduce our two featured speakers. Keith will also moderate a Q&A at the end of the discussion, and so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will make sure that they get asked. And so let me spotlight Keith and Representative Romer and Senator Sturgeon. And Keith, I believe you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, John? Okay, great. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce these two key people in this year's efforts to continue the tradition of open government here in the state of Delaware. Senator Laura Sturgeon is the first Latina elected to the Delaware State Senate and is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, a member of the Senate Labor and Elections and Government Affairs Committee, and sits on the Budget Writing Joint Finance Committee. Her career in education includes teaching Spanish at Concord High School and English at Del Castle and Hodson's Technical High Schools. She held a board seat on her teacher union's executive committee and also on the board of the Delaware State Education Association. With a passion for women's rights and a desire to help mold public education policy, she was inspired to run for a seat in the Delaware General Assembly. In 2025, she sponsored Senate Bill 4 to establish Delaware's Office of Inspector General that was passed by the legislature and signed into law on August 14th of this year. Cindy Romer, a House prime sponsor of SB 4, says, it is critical that we as state government are transparent about our processes and any of the issues that arise within them. With a degree in economics, a background as a technology consultant, and determined to use her voice, privilege, and energy in the service of others, she's been a community advocate, actively serving on the Criminal Justice and Education Committees for NAACP, Newark Branch, Moms Demand Action, and ACLU of Delaware. She's a strong supporter of women's reproductive rights, the LGBTQ plus community, voting rights, and is passionate that everyone, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, or economic status, has equal opportunities for advancement. So with that, I'd like to welcome both of you, and Senator Sturgeon, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. It was giving me a message saying the host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves. So thank you for unmuting me. Hi, everybody. So happy to be here with you all, and want to express my gratitude for everything that members of DelCOG did to help us finally get an Inspector General bill across the finish line. It was many years in the making, and I want to make sure we honor the recently passed Representative Kowalko, who was mentioned earlier, and we had a moment of silence for him because he is the one who really started this all 18 years ago or so. And thank goodness we were able to bring it to fruition when he was still here and could be at the signing ceremony before he passed. So that's something that I will always treasure. And I'm so glad he was there, and we have photos of that day. So the Inspector General, is now going to be established in Delaware, but we have a few steps to take, and we have started those steps. Cindy and Keith and I are all, thank you, Connie. Yeah, I know. I'm trying not to think too much about him because it's making me feel teary. But we're in the midst of the selection of, well, not quite the selection. We are in the midst of agreeing to the qualifications that an Inspector General in the state of Delaware should have. And so there's a selection panel that has been brought together. And like I said, Cindy and Keith and I are on that selection panel. And within that panel, we formed a subcommittee to come together and agree on what we think on recommendations for the qualities we would like to see in an Inspector General. So that subcommittee has come up with the following. I have, let me see here, qualifications I'll share with you all. It's not finalized because the larger full group of the selection panel has to approve, and we're going to give them their opportunity to weigh in, and this might change a little bit, but at the current time, what we have recommended is that the minimum qualifications for an Inspector General in Delaware be a person who has a Juris Doctorate or a master's degree, is a person with 10 years of relevant experience in 2 or more of the following fields: investigation of fraud, waste, or abuse, financial analysis, law, management analysis, criminal justice administration, public administration, ethics, accounting, auditing. So 2 or more of those fields. They would be a person who has strong executive management and administrative experience, including but not limited to policy implementation and budgeting, considerable knowledge and ability to apply state and federal laws, statutes, and regulations, and considerable leadership skills and experience. We also added some ideal qualifications, but if the person doesn't have these, they would not be barred from being considered, and that would be experience working in an office of the Inspector General, knowledge of governmental organization and functional responsibilities. Once the person is, special requirements are that the person must be a resident of the state of Delaware at the time of appointment, and that within 3 months after appointment, if they don't already have it, they would need to get a certification as a certified Inspector General. So those are the qualifications as of right now that we're going to be recommending to the larger selection panel. Stay tuned to see what the larger selection panel decides to do with those recommendations. I think if they change, it would be more of a matter of some of these minimum qualifications could move to a different category of like ideal or preferred, let's call it preferred qualifications. Because we, even amongst ourselves in the subcommittee, we're not 100% aligned on which qualifications should be absolutely required versus preferred. So we're going to leave that to the larger group to discuss and make the final decision. So Once that final decision is made, the Secretary of State will be able to make a job posting for this position, and applicants will have a certain amount of time to send in their applications. We've already received applications from people who are so eager to be our next Inspector General that they kind of proactively sent applications to the Secretary of State and myself and others. So it looks like there's definite interest out there. The fact that we have applications without even a job posting existing, I think, is a good sign. And we look forward to, as a selection panel, deciding on sort of how we are going to rank all the applicants, and you know, we have this criteria, but if we have, you know, applicants who meet all the qualifications and have some of the preferred qualifications, then, you know, how are we going to narrow it down to 3? And that's what the bill or the law now charges us with, coming up with 3 names to pass on to the governor to choose from. And then once the governor makes his choice, the Senate will have to confirm that person. So that's where things stand now. And I will throw it to Representative Romer to add any color to that or any other thoughts on that. And same with Keith, since you're part of this group that's doing this work, if there's anything I missed, please feel free to share your thoughts.
I have some just overall thoughts. And the first thing I want to acknowledge is that my lift was easy in the House, and taking this legislation through the House was made a lot easier because of the hard work of Senator Laura Sturgeon. I mean, you did the heavy lifting. That work, along with DelCOG and obviously my predecessor, John Cuoco, and his 20 years of advocacy for this office. So, you know, I just want to take a moment and talk about how democracy really does take work. And I think for those of us who were in group texts and canvassing for other candidates, we saw that really paid off on Tuesday. I think we're really seeing some good motivation across the country. I think we're seeing in certain elections, especially like the New York mayor's election, we're seeing people get excited to vote for something, not necessarily against something, and it's an energy that I think we really need. And so as legislators, I think, you know, the first thing we need to do is make ourselves accessible. And I learned a lot of that, honestly, from John when I first met him, when I was running for office. When I was campaigning, it was so obvious to me when I was knocking on doors that the people in our district really knew him. And that was just something that I took from him. So, and I've tried to implement that. I have constituents have my cell. John made it very clear to me that his constituents had his cell. So my constituents have my cell. Most of the people I hope on this call have my cell. I personally respond to my emails. I'm out in the community. I hold monthly meetings with constituents, both in the morning and at night, alternating. But I often remind people that they have to meet their elected officials halfway. Like, you have to sign up for newsletters, follow them on social media, do things to show up at community meetings and committee meetings to hold us accountable, because the more you're involved, the easier it's also going to be to hold us accountable. So I really believe once you start talking to legislators and you engage with them, you can see who they really are. So this is such an amazing milestone for Delaware. It was the truest bipartisan legislation in its truest form. I saw John the other day, and I was telling him I was like really excited in committee to like keep, like I was like, ask me questions, and they were like, Cindy, we like this. We don't have anything. And I was like, but I can talk about the amendments. You want to hear about the amendments? They're like, we're good. We're good. We're ready to vote. And I'm like, but I want to talk about it because it's really, really exciting. But it was truly a bipartisan support for this office. And I think it's because we know, Democrat, Republican, that there is always going to be the need to investigate waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement. And, you know, one of the things is that, you know, some of that waste could also not be intentional. You know, some of these are unintended consequences of things that we do that we realize, wow, that's wasteful. Why are we having, you know, this sort of redundancy or this sort of inefficiency in what we're doing? So, you know, hopefully this office can help fix a lot of that. It also gives public and employees, whistleblowers, a clear place to report problems. And I think that's a safe space that people really want to know exists. So really, I think it's on us, the committee. I think the subcommittee of for the inspector general was such, Laura, that was like decided within like the first like 30 minutes of the very first meeting, is that there's just a little too many cooks in the kitchen. We need a few less people having an opinion, and then bring that back to to the bigger group. And so I think that's such a great step to figure out, like, what do we really want? What are the qualifications we really want in that position? Because at the end of the day, nobody in Delaware wants this to be a figurehead position. We don't want just somebody who is completely unable to handle the work coming in. And normally amendments are like, oh, you hate to compromise. But I think one of the really good amendments is that in what is it, like 3 years, it's going to be under review. And a lot of times when those things happen, it's like, okay, yeah, we actually need more people, or, you know, this person needs this, or this office needs this, or they need this new technology to be able to support all of the work, or we can't honor anonymity because of this type of technology that we need to change. So I think that that specific one really is going to make the legislation stronger. So I'm really here really just to thank all of the people, specifically Laura, John, and DelCOG for really getting this through.
Well, you're being modest, Representative Romer, because you did separate it through the House, and so everybody has a role to play, and it worked beautifully getting this through this year. And as you pointed out, getting it finished, getting it across the finish line, and getting it to the governor, and getting it signed, and having the honor of having John Kowalko there to see his dream come true. So, one quick point. The next full committee, the full meeting of the panel is next Friday. I just saw the posting for, I think it's 10 o'clock on the 14th. So, and it's open to the public, so you can check on the website for it. And that posting should be there. If you can't be there in person, you can certainly do it through the Zoom meeting. All of these, this is one thing we advocate, is everything is open to the public. That's a hallmark of what DelCOG is all about. And with that, are there any questions that anyone in the audience, the Zoom audience out there, has that would like to ask a question? I'm not sure I see any, but if there are, let us know, and we'll be glad to answer. It's like, how do we ensure the IG will stay independent?
I'll take a stab. The way we wrote the bill is, well, actually, let me go back to the qualifications. So what I didn't mention was who cannot be nominated for Inspector General. And this is part of, this is at least part of the equation of how we keep the office independent. So a person may not be the Inspector General of Delaware until 3 years after the last day of their employment in any of the following positions. So any Delaware statewide public office, any member of the Delaware General Assembly, any Delaware cabinet secretary or individual of equivalent rank within the executive branch, and any Delaware division director or individual of equivalent rank within the executive branch, except that it does not apply to a deputy attorney general, because deputy attorneys general are good candidates for this type of a position potentially. So we didn't want to bar them, but you know, those other people who are barred, at least, you know, the first 3 years after they've held these positions, I think that helps because, you know, obviously if it's a cabinet secretary who's been a cabinet secretary under the current governor, and then suddenly becomes inspector general, it would be hard to imagine that they would be able to be completely independent and unbiased about looking into the very government that they were such a, played such a big role in. So I think that those prohibitions help. It also helps that we have the selection panel, and look, I'm away at a conference, so I'm a little distracted, but if anyone has the bill available to pull up, if you want to, you look at who's on the selection panel, because I'm not going to be able to rattle it all off the top of my head, but you'll see that it's a really good cross section of individuals of the, highest sort of integrity, hopefully, in Delaware. We have people who are the heads of organizations that are totally nonpartisan, and then we have the people who are, where there are partisan positions, they have their exact equal in the other party, so that it's not packed with just people from one party versus another party. We think that with the selection panel, the diversity in the selection panel, the bipartisanship and the nonpartisanship, the names that we ultimately decide to that we all agree to and lift up to the governor to choose from, my belief is that they are going to be people that are independent and non-biased. I just don't see how the selection panel, as diverse as it is, and given what a cross-section we represent on that panel, I don't feel like we're going to be able to agree on 3 names unless they truly are people who are above reproach, and above, fear of partisanship or bias. So there's another
Cindy,
question.
Cindy,
Yeah,
did you want to comment?
yeah. The only thing I would add is in Delaware, it's hard to, not run into somebody at the grocery store that isn't your, daughter's former softball coach's mother. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's how Delaware is. But I think that's why it's so important that, not only do we get this right and set the expectation right with that person, but then there's also an accountability feature there as well, right? Like, there's going to be a level of, this is the expectation of this position, and the character of that position is going to be really, really important.
We also
And
have the the fact there's so many layers before we even get someone in that position, right? Even then, after the governor decides from the 3 choices that the selection panel agreed to, the Senate still has to confirm, and the Senate will do its due diligence in vetting these people. But once they're in office, there are ways we've tried to insulate the office from undue influence. They're going to have their own HR, do their own hiring. They're not going to go through the HR that all the other government entities under the executive branch go through. They're going to have all of that will be done independently through their own office. So the office is definitely has a level of independence that, in hiring and hiring decisions and setting their own policies and procedures, that all will be done by this inspector general with whoever, they choose to hire to be their lieutenants and others. So including their own people to do hiring and payroll and all of that. So we set them up to completely be an island unto themselves, which we think will be helpful to keep them independent. And also their term does not align with the term of the governor. So once they're in place for 5 years, and then they can be, reappointed. But that 5 years goes beyond the term of the governor. So that also helps because, a new governor can't just come along and fire them and puts, and try like for someone that's more friendly. And the current governor can, may or may not be around to through the end of this person's term. So these are a few of we did everything that the Association of Inspectors General recommended to insulate the position as much as possible from undue influence. So, I mean,
It's
there's
just
only so much you can do.
we get the benefit of learning from other states, and
Yeah.
like you said, like you built the legislation based on, we're not the first, we're not the guinea pig for this. We can look at best practices, and that's what you did when you wrote this.
Right. And if I can piggyback on that very point, this is an independent, nonpartisan position. It's unelected. It's an appointment for that very reason, so that someone's not running for office. And as Senator Sturgeon mentioned, the office is an island unto itself. They'll have their own attorney, their own staff. They will not be dependent on another agency for advice, counsel, etc.
Yeah,
I
even
come
like you,
from an
yeah.
IG background, and that's exactly the way that was structured for that very reason. So
And
you insulate yourself.
I'll be honest, I think that right now, budget conversations are really tough, but I do envision this having to be expanded. I think that, we probably haven't even funded the Office of the Auditor. You know what I mean? Because I think what happened is, just to be super transparent, I think when Kathy McGinnis got out, so many people got excited about having a new auditor, and they kind of flooded it a little bit with like, okay, having somebody who they think is going to like really take these things seriously. And so I think we can kind of envision that maybe happening with the Office of Inspector General. And so we have to be really careful about setting them up for success as well, because there's going to be a lot coming at them right away.
No doubt, no doubt. So there's also a question related to Senator Sturgeon mentioned some of the qualifications and some of the restrictions. And this position is open across the country. This is not restricted to Delawareans. So if someone from Oregon or Texas or Oklahoma, or wherever it happens to be, can apply. And if they're the
Yep, they just
qualified
have
people.
to move here if they get the job. That's all. And live here, become a resident if they get the job. When they get the job. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's another question about how do we envision the relationship between the IG office and the auditor? And if I could take a quick crack at that, essentially the way the law is structured, these would be complementary. It's if you think of a triangle, it's the Office of the Inspector General, the State Auditor, and the Attorney General's office. And they would complement each other. They would not duplicate efforts. And we all have our independent roles to play regarding that. So,
Yeah, I'll just add that, actually I got distracted because I'm gonna pull up the bill so that I can tell you who is on the selection panel. So I have to do that on another screen, Delaware General Assembly. There we go. But, complimentary, yes. The AG's office and the auditor's office and the Inspector General, they all will work with each other. And in fact, the law talks about entering into MOUs between the the Inspector General enter into an MOU with the auditor and auditor's office, and will enter into a separate MOU with the Attorney General's office, so that they can work out, where one's like responsibilities end and the others begin, and how they're going to help each other and work together. So that's just going to be one of the things that the new Inspector General and their office will have to do once they get in office. We had extensive talks with both of those offices, both the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of the Auditor. And they, to varying extents, they both made clear that there's plenty of government oversight that has to be done. And having an Inspector General is like another form of oversight that will help to get all the work done that has to be done. The Attorney General's office, one of their roles will be to take over if the Inspector General finds something that is criminal, as opposed to just, there's all kinds of waste and mismanagement that doesn't rise to criminality. But if they suspect criminality, they have to share that with the Attorney General's office, and then the Attorney General's office would, if they choose to take over, they would do so, and then they could also toss it back to the Inspector General if they don't find anything that, warrants prosecution, or that they feel they can prosecute successfully. So there'll be a lot of back and forth, but they will not be reliant on the same sets of resources. Like, the other thing the Attorney General's office asked is that this Inspector General's office have their own their own counsel, their own lawyers that can do work, so they're not borrowing from the Department of Justice, which other agencies do. And
I also found, like, in practicality, like in more like real life experiences, I had an issue that I wanted the auditor's office and to investigate, and they're not really set up to do that kind of stuff. Like, they're set up to audit, financials, or they're set up to audit to be like, are you following your process in your SOPs? But they're not necessarily set up to be like, are you doing the right thing? Do you know what I mean? Like, are those processes the right thing to do? Um, and I mean, it's understandable, like that there's a lot that goes into that, whether you're talking about environmental issues or IEPs in schools, or whether, I mean, there's just, like you said, there's enough work to go around for oversight. And I know at least the specific thing I was looking into with Christina, there wasn't really like a path to go through that within the auditor's office, but I think it could be within maybe the Inspector General, if that makes sense.
thank you, Cindy. I have in front of me now the language of who is on the selection panel. So can I share that now, Keith?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, wait. I saw a list of people, but it was about the working with the Attorney General and the auditor. One second. It was a wrong list. Here we go. Okay. The selection panel is comprised of the following members or a designee: the Attorney General, who serves as chair, so that's Kathy Jennings; a state representative from the Majority Caucus, that's Cindy Romer, appointed by the Speaker of the House; a state senator from the Majority Caucus, that is me, I was appointed by the President Pro Tem. We have a state representative from the Minority Caucus, and remind me who that is, Cindy?
That's Representative Lofsky.
That's right, it's
Yeah.
Holofsky.
Okay, I thought it was gray. Okay.
A state senator from the Minority Caucus, that's Senator Brian Pettyjohn. He was appointed by the Senate Minority Leader, which is Jared Hawker. The Secretary of State, so Char Patibunda Sanchez. The President of the Delaware State Bar Association, whose name I don't remember at this time. The President of the Delaware Association of Chiefs of Police. The President of the Delaware State Conference of Branches of the NAACP, the President of the League of Women Voters of Delaware, the President of the Delaware Coalition for Open Government, or their designee, the 3 members of the public with experience related to open governor. And after the amendment, one of those members of the public was appointed by the governor, one was appointed by the Speaker of the House, and one was appointed by the President Pro Tem of the Senate. And that is it. That's the selection panel. That's what makes up the selection panel.
And to your point, if that many people can agree on 3 people, that's a pretty good.
Exactly. I mean, and you can see it's kind of like people from across the spectrum, ideologically, politically, nonpartisan, partisan, the whole gamut. It's a pretty broad list. And we've worked well together. I guess we've only had one full group meeting so far, but it's very, it's a good group. It's a good group of people who are really passionate about getting this right.
Another question is, can you talk about some of the specific duties of the IG?
Yeah, I mean, Cindy, why don't you start, and then I'm going to go. I know in the synopsis of the bill, we gave some examples of things that might help people envision, because I know when we say investigate fraud, waste, abuse, mismanagement of government resources, that's very broad. So,
Yeah. And some of that would logistically be, auditing, say a real life example could be that somebody comes in and says, hey, I believe that these contracts are being awarded to somebody's brother-in-law every time or whatever, that
Right.
person then could go in and, pull the RFPs, pull all of the records on who responded to those RFPs, interview people who make the decisions at the approval level. They could go back and look at finances and say, okay, show me all of the RFPs that have been granted to this person and where they came in the budgets, and start interviewing those whistleblowers as well, subpoenaing records and emails and things like that, and really almost like, I mean, in that case, it kind of is an audit, but it's based on not just some sort of standard cycle or something like that, but it's actually more of that accusation of fraud and abuse. So I think that, and that's kind of a real life example, right? Like, I think that there's situations where you do feel like you've seen in Delaware where, why is this always getting awarded to this? Or, where are the relationships here? Because Delaware is such a small state. So I think it's important to have somebody go in and look at those things. So looking over policy, procedures, contracts, looking at to see if that person, put in a bid and then all of a sudden put in a lower bid after the fact to come in under, and maybe there was some underhandedness there where they were told, hey, you're not the lowest bid, come back and bring another contract to be the lowest bid or something. Like, a lot of that, I mean, it's a lot of like grunt work, a lot of paperwork, a lot of those kind of investigative, a lot of it auditing.
Yeah, and
Right.
the Inspector General doesn't just investigate the, based on whistleblower complaints or, whatever concerns that are brought to the surface, anonymously, by the way.
Yeah.
You can share your concern anonymously. So it could be a member of the public, it could be an insider, but it's not just like the executive branch offices, but also anyone who contracts with the state of Delaware. So if somebody's gotten a contract with the state of Delaware to do work on behalf of the state, they can be investigated. All are recipients of state dollars for all those nonprofits that we help fund. They would all be, subject to possible investigation because they use state dollars. So it's a pretty, it has broad authority to investigate, lots of areas. And then the examples that are given at the end of the synopsis, if anyone, cares to look up the bill, are good because the examples were given to help explain how the cost of running this office and keeping this office running, I should say, could ultimately be recuperated by the findings of the office. But these also give really interesting examples of how inspector generals, the kinds of things they found in other states. So I'm going to give a couple of those examples. Like in Georgia, an agency administrator faked multiple pregnancies, receiving 265 hours of leave for which she was not eligible. So that was uncovered by the inspector general. And then the money that led to them recuperating, certainly helped to offset the cost of the office. Massachusetts recovered more than $245,000 from 13 former troopers within the state police for overtime pay they received for hours they did not actually work. In Indiana, a Department of Child Services worker was found to have falsified case notes regarding child welfare assessments. Okay, I guess. Oh, this is just the impact. It isn't necessarily only about the fiscal. In Louisiana, state agencies were found to have wasted more than $500,000 in non-refundable airline tickets that were allowed to expire and lose value. so those are just some like things you wouldn't even think of that an inspector general could uncover, some of which could lead to recuperation of funds. Because the inspector general would be able to sue for recovery of funds, if they find the responsible person or agency.
And I can give some quick real life
Yeah.
examples of where the agency where I worked, we looked at the issues of concerns about overtime abuse, the abuse of travel privileges, travel funds, and that kind of thing, as well as people not working their scheduled hours, that kind of thing. So those can come up through either someone internally raising an issue or just the standard review procedures within an agency that flags something to look at in detail, and maybe that agency either doesn't have it, the capacity to do it, or they think it's something more significant. They can hand it up to the IG.
I'm looking at the list of questions, and Nick asked any law enforcement agencies under the purview of the OIG. The answer to that is yes, the state police. Because municipalities at this time don't fall under the OIG, so no municipalities, no municipal police departments, but the state police do. And then, let's see, there was another question. Oh, Joe Edelin asked how limited is the OIG's authority over incidents related to the General Assembly, individual legislators. It's fairly limited. The OIG, because like we're supposed to police ourselves in terms of like our ethic, we have, ethics committees that can be formed to investigate individual members of the General Assembly for ethics violations and things like that. But where it does come to play is in terms of like the General Assembly has access to a lot of resources. So, the caucus, they, we hire and we fire and we have to procure, all kinds of things to keep our offices running. So when it comes to things like procurement and spending tax dollars, the way we spend tax dollars to keep the General Assembly running, in that limited limited scope, the Inspector General would be able to look into that. Like, so we were constantly, I don't know, if Senator Sokola's brother was selling us all our notepads and pens, that's the kind of thing that the Inspector General would be able to call out.
And
Yeah.
Laura, couldn't they also look into if somebody was using like state resources and funds for like their campaign? Like that's something that they could probably look into as well, like misuse of resources that way.
I don't want to say. I
Okay.
think so, but I'm not sure because I know I remember learning it was more limited than what I thought it was. Like I was open to us being just completely, under open. I want everyone to feel the OIG could investigate us. But
Yeah.
it seemed to me that when I talked to the drafting attorney, it was more limited to procurement, basically how we're using state resources. But your example is one, where
Just use
kind
of state
it is
resources.
state
Yeah.
resources. Yes,
Yeah.
it's state
Yeah.
resources. So it could be. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to say.
I think there's a question too about what kind of oversight would it be to make sure that the IG office stays accountable, and one issue there would be is if there was a concern that somebody was doing something inappropriate or illegal, someone could go to the public integrity office, or they could go to the attorney general's office because they have a unit that looks at government employees and
Yeah.
file a complaint there. So we could be the IG's office can be looked at in that way. And if I make a Freudian slip and I say we, that's the old IG in me coming out. I have no interest in it. I have no intention of working in the IG's office. So no, that's not me. So
I see Representative Burns's question. I mean, yes, I think if they receive state grants and state funds, then those monies would be subject to OIG oversight.
yeah.
I feel like we should have invited Debbie Gottschalk, who wrote the bill. Because
Thanks.
like I'm not
Debbie.
an attorney, so I like some of these questions. I feel like,
You
oh
should have.
gosh, I can't speak with total certainty, but it would seem so. Yes. And by the way, hi Frank.
Yeah. Kamala Smith is on as well. I
Oh
saw
yeah, hi Cam.
Representative Kamala.
The Will there be an effort to bring municipalities and state universities under the authority of the IG? I think potentially in the future. This is a new office, and what will happen is, and I speak from my experience at the GAO's IG office, when it was set up as a statutory IG, you find that there are limitations in what your capabilities are, what you're legally allowed to do. And then you make note of it, and then you can request the legislature to modify the law to cover, to make up for deficiencies or lack of authority on the areas where make an argument for doing that.
And if I
no
could-
Yeah,
doubt
I think once this office is Connie, I don't feel like I understand the intricacies as well as I should, but also I've moved on like to other things. I'm so busy with like the Public Education Funding Commission now, and my days of just being completely mired in the OIG bill, are over, because once the bill passed, we've kind of moved on. So to the selection process. So forgive me, if I don't have the answers at the tip of my tongue for all these things. I would have back in like, May when I was running it through committee. But yeah, which made me lose my train of thought. What were we talking about, Keith?
I can kind of jump in it, but
Okay, you jump in. Thank
the
you.
municipality piece, we
Oh,
were
yeah,
talking.
yeah.
I think that when it was looked at originally, just when you start looking at municipalities and then all the counties, the fiscal note just got ginormous, because you're talking about agencies like, that's my understanding, at least, of where it
Well,
was.
there was another reason, and I'm like the person who just says what's usually left unsaid. So I'm gonna be authentic to me. If we had included counties and municipalities, we would have needed 2/3 vote in both chambers.
Oh, interesting.
And I mean, it turned out we had 2/3.
Yeah.
We had near unanimous. We were unanimous in the Senate, and we were nearly unanimous in the House. Ironically, the person who voted against it is the person who's on the selection panel, Representative Holofsky. But I don't know what that was about. That's your house. That's your house, Cindy. You have to take care of your house.
I don't know what that was
And,
about.
I'm happy.
I think
I thought it was the
I-
fiscal. I didn't know that. I thought it was the fiscal note.
I
Oh,
believe that there's also a resource aspect to all of this, because
of course.
be able to do this is going to be a very small office to start,
Yeah.
and
The university for sure. There's Brian Townsend actually does have a bill. It's a Senate bill, so I've been in some of the meetings that he's had. He's mostly had meetings. This was, oh God, I think it was last spring. I think there's some people from the news on here who may have been on this call. I think it was last spring he started having conversations with mostly the media. At that point, he was starting the conversations with them about the FOIA and kind of trying to hear from them, like, where are your FOIA pains? And the university was definitely brought into that conversation to clarify that they are a state agency and therefore subject to FOIA. But I'd have to check in with Brian. I'm not exactly sure where.
Well, I know the
and
University of Delaware is included, at least insofar as, the state does fund the university partially. So the university is not exempt. The university, you know, I don't know if it's limited to just the funds that they get from the state that can be investigated, but at least, at the very least, that is definitely the case. And then, but for the municipalities, you do, when I say like, okay, the bill passed unanimously, but part of the reason maybe the bill passed unanimously is because we didn't have pushback. We probably would have run into more pushback if we had included counties and municipalities, because, you know, suddenly we'd be hearing from the county executive, like, wait a minute, I don't know if I want you guys to be able to investigate, you know, the counties. And well, and I say county executive because I'm Newcastle County, but you know, the equivalents in Sussex and Kent. Um, the municipalities, same thing. So like, we didn't want to do anything that was going to prevent this bill from moving forward by trying to be too expansive all at once. But we do think that if this agency proves its worth, which I'm sure it will, then it will be easier to bring more, you know, more entities under the umbrella of the OIG's, you know, ability to investigate.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, that was some of the conversations.
You know, like I said, I think the important thing is that this, when this gets up and running, then there will be, I'm sure, issues that come up that nobody thought of. You get into the intricacies of the relationship, the formal relationships between the local county governments as well as the state, and what authority the IG has or doesn't have, or it's unclear. And those kinds of things can be addressed through future adjustments in the law if need be to clarify.
I think one of the
So,
questions I'll have for one of the candidates is really about how will you prioritize the work coming in? Because again, this is going to be an office that people for, you know, decades have been working towards and wanting to see happen in Delaware. So how will they prioritize kind of those issues
Mhm.
coming in? And I'm sure they have, you know, to Laura, to your point, that the office, the National Office of Inspector Generals, or I'm not exactly sure what their name is, but I'm sure that they can give them
Association.
some guidance. But how do you do that when you have so much, you know, I mean,
well, there,
yeah.
They will be
there is,
required to respond to every inquiry or every complaint, but the response could be, okay, no, this is not, like, this isn't our purview and this is why.
Right.
But yeah, once they've winnowed out the ones that they're not responsible for, they may have plenty of complaints come in that an IG's office would be responsible for, and it might be more than what they can handle. So it's a great question, and I don't, you know, I don't know how they would prioritize it, but
I,
go ahead.
I can tell you from my experience at where I worked, you have a backlog. There's no question there'll be a backlog.
Yeah.
Some complaints may come in that are similar to something that you're already working on. Something may come in and it becomes a really high priority because there's potentially a lot of money involved, and that may take precedence over something that's going on. So you may have to put something on pause something you're working on to put that do that, or maybe something that's handed off. It may be more appropriate for the especially if there's any kind of criminal aspect to it, could be handed off to the Attorney
AG.
General's
Yeah.
office.
How
So
does that work, Keith, with sorry, I'm turning this into a Q&A where I have questions too, but how does that work with transparency at their level? Like, the reality is they may not want everyone to know what's in their backlog because they don't want to give state police a heads up that we're going to be investigating this, this, and this, because we know we're not going to be able to look at it for 3 months. So how do offices typically handle that? Like balancing transparency with also not wanting to alert who you're going to be investigating that you're going to be investigating.
I think they would. I think they would just probably say we have we have issues related to this we're looking into, but they wouldn't get into the details because they don't want to compromise the integrity of investigation or audit.
Yeah, they don't have to publicly put out any kind of report until they've completed an investigation. And then once an investigation is completed, they'll put out on their website the results, you know, what they found or what they didn't find, whatever whatever conclusions they come to as a result of that investigation. But during the investigation, they you know, they don't have to say anything.
Gotcha.
Right. So I think we might have looks like one question.
Pamela, yeah, we essentially we hold the IG's office accountable in the sense that if there's a if we as in the General Assembly, if there becomes a concern about the attorney, sorry, the Inspector General, we do have the ability to remove an Inspector General from office, but it's a really high bar. Again, I'd have to look at the bill, but it's something like a 2/3 vote of both the Senate and the House. You know, but nothing short of that, because you don't want to you don't want to make it easy to remove an Inspector General, because then, you know, then if they're investigating someone who has influence, they could be like, hey, General Assembly, we need you to remove this person from office. So it's a pretty high bar, but it is not impossible to remove an Inspector General. It's all in the bill.
And again, it can be a referral if there is concern about the integrity of what the Inspector General is doing. I think they could probably talk to the Attorney General's office if there, especially if there's a concern about criminal behavior or something. And
Yeah,
I believe
no one's immune
Senator
from
Sturgeon,
that.
you also said at the end of like a 3-year review of the operation of the office as well.
Yeah, we one of my
sunshine.
colleagues wanted to put them under sunset review. And was it after only 3 years? I don't think it was 3 years. I think it was more like, because they wanted to do it after 3 and I said 7, and I think we settled on 5. We negotiated. But you know, like Representative Romer said, sometimes sunset is used to make something go away, but more often than not, it's used to full review. Yeah, but does it, so 2032 would be how many years? Somebody do the math for me, because I'm not going to do it right now.
Yeah, that's 7 years out from now.
Oh, good, 7 years. Okay, so I got something closer to what I wanted. So there are actually, like, the Association of Inspectors General did not like the idea at all of this office being, you know, put under sunset review, and because they were afraid sunset would be used, or JLOSC, yeah, we call it sunset for short, right? Exactly. We that can be used as a way to make it go away, right? I mean, it could happen, but by the same token, as Representative Romer mentioned earlier, the sunset review process can also be used to give an agency that doesn't have enough resources more resources, or at least to make recommendations that an agency receive more resources. So, you know, we have to trust the process, and we have to trust that in 7 years, you know, someone's not going to be, you know, trying to influence for the wrong reasons the members of the joint legislative oversight and sunset committee to like eliminate or to recommend elimination of the office of the Inspector General, but rather hopefully they'll be recommending that we beef that office up more and give it more people and perhaps even more oversight over municipalities and counties.
So it's a quarter after 8, and I know we are looking to wrap this up at 8:30, and I believe that President Kowalko still has a couple of little points of business to take care of. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you all. Thank you, Representative Romer and Senator Sturgeon. This has been tremendous. It's been really informative, I think. And if you all in the audience out there have questions, you can reach out to either legislator or reach out to DelCOG, and to the extent we can answer questions.
Yes,
either
please
about
do.
us.
If you don't know how to reach me directly, send something to your friend in DelCOG, and they all know how to reach us, and we'll be happy to continue the conversation. It's been great to be with you all, and I'm gonna go and eat some gumbo here in New Orleans because I haven't had dinner yet.
Joy. Thank you
Right.
all.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys so much. All right. So thank you everyone who attended tonight, and thank you especially to Senator Sturgeon and Representative Romer for joining us. Thank you as well to all of the DelCOG committee members who helped plan this event. These events take a lot of time and work to put together, and the committee did an excellent job. Our next board meeting will be held on December 2nd via Zoom. The details are available on our website's event calendar. We will also be organizing an event to celebrate the annual Sunshine Week in March, and so we hope to see you at that as well. As our last order of business, I would like to invite DelCOG Secretary Nick Wasleski to announce the results of our officer elections. The officers will take their positions at our January board meeting and will serve for the next 2 years. And so let me find Nick so I can unmute him. All right, Nick, you should be able to unmute.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you. I am pleased to announce the results of the election for DelCOG officers who will serve in 2026 and 2027. Our officers are as follows: Keith Steck, President; Bill Shields, Vice President; Anita Rush, Treasurer; and John Kowalko, Secretary. DelCOG looks forward to their leadership and efforts to promote transparency and accountability in our government. Thank you for joining in this evening and supporting DelCOG in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nick. So once again, thank you to everyone. Congratulations to our new officers. Thank you for taking on those responsibilities. If anyone would like to join DelCOG and help with our important work, please send us an email, visit our website to join more. If you're interested in joining the board, if you're interested in joining one of our committees, there are so many opportunities for you to help. As a small all volunteer nonprofit organization, your help can really make a big difference in what we're able to accomplish. So with that, I am adjourning the 2025 DelCOG annual meeting. Please stay safe, everyone, and continue pushing for responsible, accountable, open government. Thank you, everyone. Good night.